Wealth Talks is proudly brought to you by Allan Gray. True rewards take time.
Oh yes, it's Ladies' Night. That was Cool and the gang with that one, Ladies' Night. It's time for another Wealth Talk here on today's edition of the show, brought to you by Allan Gray. Now, Caillin is an experienced production coordinator who graduated from the University of Namibia with an honors degree in law. She subsequently did a fellowship in public management at Harvard University in Washington, D.C., and currently a production manager, producer, and chairperson of the Filmmakers Association of Namibia. Caillin is also a newly appointed board member of the Namibia Film Commission. Before turning 30, Caillin ensured to acquire unit trusts, shares, and various policies. We find out on this edition of Wealth Talks how she ensures a safe future through her investments. We have Caillin Basson on the line. Good afternoon to you, Caillin, and thank you so much for joining us here at 99.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Geez, what an introduction.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So powerful. I love it. And it's so great to have, folks like you chatting to us about your money story and where it all starts for you and why you invest. Let's start off with our first question, Caillin. What is your money story? What are the lessons you learned about money as a child, and how did they shape how you look at money today?
I mean, it's quite interesting, hey? So I got my first holiday job, I think, when I was in grade 8, probably 13 or so.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the age of 15 is where I was on my first film set. I'm an only child, so my mother was kind of like the general of the house. Yes and amen.
Yeah.
And my dad was the more like relaxed one. Like I'm the only child. He doesn't really say no to me, etc. So obviously his way of spending money was also, just make my mom and I happy.
Yeah.
Whereas my mom was like long-term planning, this needs to get paid, this needs to get done, etc. And as we know, I just turned 30, but a lot of our parents, especially during the apartheid era, didn't have the opportunity or the knowledge to invest or to really plan for the future. And my parents it was about the same. So I kind of grew up, having a comfortable life, but not really understanding finances and what to do with it. So as I kind of started to earn my own money, I made it rain.
Yeah.
I was like, I've got money, I can buy this, I can do this,
Yeah.
There were times where I bought like 3 pairs of the same shoes.
Really making it rain, hey?
Really making it rain. When I started studying, etc., and even then I didn't really quite understand the value of investing or putting money aside. And with time, slowly, as I saw my family, friends around me, and especially my parents, who I support in some sense financially, I realized, you know what, this is not what I want for myself. I don't want to be like 50, 60, retired one day, depending on my children or worrying about this. Luckily at the time, this was only about 2-3 years ago, I met someone both in my private life and as well as colleagues who started kind of like very freely and openly talking about finances. They're like, oh, do this or do that or maybe try this out. And that's where I kind of started really thinking about this. Because I think in the beginning I had the notion, I'm not sure if you heard this quote yet, we buy things we do not need.
Yes.
With money we don't have.
Exactly, I've heard that quote.
To impress people we don't like.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Why do we do that?
It's mind-boggling. It is.
And some people, they reason like I did. I thought, okay, I don't come from much. So, of course, let me spend.
Yeah.
But then people in a similar situation are like, I don't come from much. So let me prepare.
For the future.
Exactly.
Yeah. Caillin, you've now become an avid investor. When do you know which investment is the right one for you? When do you know that?
I'm not sure it's a matter really in terms of when do you know. For me, it was just a matter of realizing it is time. I need to do something today. Otherwise, I won't do it. Because I had reached this point where I thought, I'm 29 now. If I had only done this when I was 21, imagine where this could have been.
Exactly.
So I obviously engaged and I spoke to a colleague of mine, Sophie, and to a partner of mine. I said, listen, This is where I'm at. What do I do? And then I thought it was something simple, like funeral cover. I was like, shit, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that online. I was like, damn it, what if I pass and then my parents are stuck with having to try and find money or something to bury me?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing I got. And then the second recommendation I got was in terms of probably buying property. If you want to buy property, especially as a young individual, because it's very expensive for us.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
It is. It's priced, especially in Windhoek. If you can spend a certain amount on rent, and that is what your limit is, try and find property where your mortgage will be about the same as you would have paid for rent. Exactly. So I started off with the funeral cover. I got a recommendation for a financial advisor where I then engage in terms of life insurance. In the event if I pass, that at least the people that I leave behind will be sorted out. Same with the unit trust and pension. And this is kind of where everything started for me.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough that I had all of this advice and good people in my life that could advise me in terms of what to do, what not to do, and here we are.
Yeah, I think you basically answered this next question, so I'm going to ask this instead. Why do you think it's important to enlist, the help of a financial advisor if you are thinking about investing?
I mean, I did some research myself in terms of how to invest. It took me some time to figure out how the stock market works.
Yeah.
But even then, I'm not a financial boffin or anything, I'm in the film industry. I'm a lawyer by training. And I think we all know, lawyers' finances are not necessarily our strongest point. We argue in terms of reasoning. So in terms of engaging with a financial advisor, you get the advice in terms of what possibly to do and what not to do, because they have experience. For instance, I inquired, I'm with IJG, and some other investment companies as well. I inquired about the procurement of shares in a local company, and they advised me and they said, what, this is perfectly fine, but please note, this is not a short-term solution.
Yeah.
It is much easier to resell shares from the JSE as it is from the Namibian Stock Exchange. So if you, for instance, buy shares in Namibian companies, it will benefit you in the long term. It's not a matter of buying it and then in a couple of months you sell and make a profit. It's a matter of buying it, you nurture it, it grows over years, and then eventually you see the benefit thereof.
Yeah.
So this obviously then made me decide, okay, maybe I shouldn't buy right now in this local company if this is, for instance, what the return would look like. So I really advise, obviously, in terms of getting a financial advisor. And obviously there's different companies or individuals that offer the service. And there's nothing wrong with shopping around.
Yeah.
Something simple such as a unit trust. There was a company where I wanted to open a unit trust. But the documentation that I just got an email with 10,000 documents in the same amount of pages. And I thought, hell no. I don't have time for this. And then there was another investor where I called and I said, this is what I would like. And they filled out all the forms for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's really kind of to shop around and see, and not to be ashamed of really being honest about where you're at and what you're capable of.
Yeah, I agree with that. You did mention now that you do invest in unit trusts. So can you tell us also, what some of the benefits are, investing through unit trusts?
So I think the biggest thing in terms of why I wanted a unit trust account was that you're kind of aware in terms of what you put in is what you're essentially going to get out. Whereas in comparison to a pension fund, yes, I have a pension fund, but once you get taxed on your wage, then your portion of that goes to your pension fund, but then you get taxed again on your pension fund. So it's like a double tax where that doesn't apply to a unit trust.
Yeah.
So you're kind of always aware in terms of what exactly you have available for when you want to make use of that. So I think that is one of the biggest advantages of a unit trust, is knowing exactly where you stand in terms of your finances, as opposed to just having a pension fund. So I just decided to double up on both.
Would you say that, before we get to our final question, Caillin, that you need to be a patient person if you are thinking about investing? Because like you said, long term, obviously, the longer your investment is there, the more interest it will build up and the more money you'll get. So I guess patience is a very good, thing to have when you invest. Would you say that's a trait that you should have if you decide to invest?
Without a doubt. And even if you don't have it, it's something you can acquire. My initial understanding of investment was that you needed to have money in order to do it. Because no one really explained to me from an early age, you can start quite low and then build that up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I always thought that investment is for the rich and for the wealthy and for the able. Hence why I never did it before. But now, like I said, and I must admit, when I started with all of this, I did everything at once. I did the pension fund, I did the life insurance, I did the unit trust, you name it. And that first month, the deductions went off. I felt it.
Yeah.
Yo,
I can imagine.
It was enough.
Yeah.
But I had to remind myself, this is not money leaving. This is money I'm putting away.
Yeah, for your future.
That I still have access to. So I've told people now, I'm never broke. If I say that I don't have finances, it means that it's finances I don't have access to. And I need to work within that.
Yeah.
And I think the other very important thing in terms of that is really planning. Like especially for us, I'm sure you're aware of black tax.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's intense. And I feel like black tax, there's an increment every year.
Yeah, it feels like that. It really does.
So in terms of the black tax, I was also like, every time this was requested or required, you would pay it as a young person, because this is also kind of like the world we grew up in and how we were taught. Now I've come to the point where I'm like, you know what, this is the amount of money I've budgeted for the month and I've allocated. So when I say, unfortunately, I cannot, because I may have finances available, but this has already been budgeted for something else.
There's a purpose for the money. You can't just give it away.
You can't just give it away. There's a purpose for it. But it took me a very long time to understand this, because obviously not coming from much, you just want and want and want, and you want to show off, and you want to give and you want to give. But then you do so at the expense of your own future.
Yeah, that's so true. Caillin, my final question to you is, what are some of your personal finance goals for your future?
So I learned, there's a lady that I follow, I think it's Ann Wilson, a bit about financial independence and what that really means. That one, for instance, if you own a property but you live in it, it's not necessarily considered an asset.
Yeah.
Because it's not really making you any money. It's not garnering you any income.
So it can't be called an asset.
Yes.
Yeah.
But she said that financial independence is when you can live your life, do what you need to do, and know that your assets can cover that without you having to work. So that is essentially what my goal is. I would like to wake up one day and decide, you know what? I'm going on a 3-week holiday.
Yeah.
And I can do that being reassured that my assets, my return on my investments, all of those things will be able to cover everything while I'm not engaging or being permanently employed or whatever the case may be.
Thank you so much for this very inspiring conversation, Caillin. I think I definitely learned a thing or two from you. I'm also thinking about investing. And like you said, if we had done this way earlier in our lives, we could have had like a really good return on our investments right now. But it's better to realize now to make that decision to invest rather than later. Like you said, you don't want to be 50 or 60 years old and have to depend on your kids.
Exactly. And you can really start with a smaller amount. And then when you're in a more comfortable financial position, as you grow professionally and personally, you can always readjust and revisit your initial terms of engagement.
Yeah, that's so true. Caillin, thank you so much once again for chatting with us. And you should have a lekker rest of your day.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. As Caillin Basson on the line, we were chatting to her about investments. That's what's happening here on Wealth Talk for the next few weeks. We are talking about that, why it's important to invest earlier rather than later, and also if right now is the right time to invest. And like she said, like it's better to do it at a younger age. If you're listening right now, you're 20, 21, 22, think about investing, because at the end of the day, you're doing it for your future. That's our Wealth Talk for today. The Black Eyed Peas is up next with I Got a Feeling That Tonight is going to be a good night on 99.
Wealth Talks was proudly brought to you by Allan Gray. True rewards take time.